What's up, Vox and Hops heads? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy, and you're listening to my podcast, Vox and Hops, where I hang out with fellow metal musicians and we talk about their lives, music, and craft beer. Are you a metalhead? Do you happen to brew craft beer? Are you a metal brewer? If you are, then I want to talk to you. You got to send me an email. I have this crazy idea that I want to start doing with metal brewers. Please hit me up at matt@voxandhops.com. That's MATT at VOXANDHOPS.com. And send me a message. Tell me that you're a metal brewer, and I want to have a conversation with you. You can also send me a message on the Vox and Hops Facebook page. I want to talk to you, all you metal brewers out there. Today on the podcast, I'm with Jordan James, the vocalist of Disentomb. Here it is, Vox and Hops, episode number 88.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Today I'm with Jordan James of Disentomb, and we are at Saint-Bock Brasserie Artisanale on Saint-Denis Street in Montreal, and we are here because you are headlining Bloodletting North America at Fofone Electric.
We certainly are. Thanks for having me. How has this been?
Oh, I'm super happy. As I mentioned right before I pushed record, you are actually a requested guest for the Vox and Hops podcast.
Yeah, unexpected, but, very good. Glad someone out there wanted to hear what someone from Disentomb had to say.
Yes, super excited when I saw you guys were coming. I love the new record.
Thank you.
It's brutal as fuck.
Yep.
The riffs are intense. They're catchy. The vocals are very, very intense. I love the production. It's almost old school style.
Yep.
Let's talk about that. How do you guys approach writing new music, producing it? Do you want that old school feel versus the modern metal production?
To be honest, when we were working on the Decaying light, we didn't really have anything like that in mind. We had a whole bunch of people sort of telling us we need to do this new album a certain way, but we were pretty particular in how we wanted it to sound. I think what we achieved with the latest album is a certain sort of atmosphere across the entire record, and we just wanted, I can see how people say it's similar to old school death metal albums because we kind of wanted to create, the atmosphere that you get on albums like Morbid Angel's Covenant or Formula's Fatal to the Flesh, where, it's got its own entity. So Adrian, our bassist, actually mixed the album.
No way.
Yeah.
That's cool. Is that something he does? Is he a producer or?
He mixes and masters under the name Inern Productions, and so he does quite a lot of really underground brutal death metal releases. But in terms of having him mix it, we sent it to a few other people, and they just didn't seem to understand what we were going for. But when we had Adrian do it, he did a mix that, no one else was really able to sort of achieve. So we kind of went with that, and it means we were able to play around with it until we found it to be something that we imagined it to sound like.
So he was patient, is what you're saying.
He was very patient. He dealt with a lot of back and forth, and
being in a band with my producer, Christian Donaldson.
Yep.
He always dislikes mixing his own band more than others, I imagine.
Yeah, because it means patience is a good word because there were quite a few back and forth. Yeah.
Being from Australia,
yep.
Do you feel that your career as a band has been held back because you're from so far away, and to go tour somewhere, the guarantees have to be that much higher to make the flights worthwhile? Is that something that you feel has been a limitation?
I think there's pros and cons. We actually discussed this the other day when we were driving. I think being from Australia gives us an opportunity where, we're kind of exotic to a lot of, the American crowds, the European crowds, because we're so far removed from everything else that I think it does work in our favor a lot. But obviously there's a lot of obstacles that get in the way when you're a band from Australia, because tickets to Europe is incredibly expensive, $2,500 per person. And then you've got all the other expenses and that sort of thing. So yeah, there's definitely pros and cons, but I think for us, it's never really held us back. We've never felt limited by it.
There's never a point where you have to say no to tours because it's just not financially viable.
No, I think we've been fortunate enough to be in a situation where we haven't had to, we haven't felt held back. But there is a level of, you definitely have to grind very hard, I think, to make it where you can tour regularly overseas when you're from Australia.
Because you're definitely not going to be that band that's going to be on every package.
No,
so
that's
as you're
right.
saying it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have to make sure we're strategic in which tours we pick.
And it's almost at the point where you have to like juggle in doing Europe and North America at the same time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we have to, each album cycle, we have to think, okay, we've got to hit Europe or the US 3 times each, and then just be strategic about, okay, should we do a headlining run? Should we support a bigger band? And that's just kind of what we've been alternating with, doing headline runs in Europe and the US, and then supporting other bigger bands as well. So just trying to juggle all of that and do Australia and Asia in between.
Absolutely, yes. We were just delivered a beautiful beer. It's called École Buissonnière from Saint-Bock, and it is a blonde lager. Let's see what it's got. It clocks in at a nice 4.5
Cheers.
ABV. Cheers. It smells like a nice lager.
No, definitely good to wet the whistle with, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's good, nice, smooth,
Yeah.
everyday drinking beer.
Yeah, good way
I
to
could
start the
survive
night.
with this. Talking about beer, are you a craft beer enthusiast?
Unfortunately not. No, I'm not really the biggest drinker. Like, I do enjoy drinking when I do get a nice beer, but in terms of no, I kind of stick to water mainly.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So you're a nice hydrated vocalist.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a craft beer scene in Brisbane?
Yeah, there definitely is. Obviously all over the place it's kind of blowing up. So, I've got plenty of friends that are they love their beers and they review all the different beers that come out. I've just never really been caught up in that wave. Not yet, anyways.
Do you remember your first experience with beer?
I do. It was always, Christmas time. And Christmas time in Australia is summer. So, you have big family get-togethers or you go to the beach, and there was always just, you kind of see your dad and your uncles drinking beer, so you always beg them for a sip, and when mum's not looking, dad would give you a sip of his beer. But that's, I think, that probably sounds like child abuse in a way, but I think most kids grew up with that, or maybe in Australia that's the case.
I don't know, because like French people serve
enjoy
wine
that.
to their children at a very young age. It's just different cultures.
Yeah, well,
and a lot of UK kids grow up in pubs because you can bring your kids to pubs and you eat Sunday night dinner in a pub while your parents have pints. So it's just
that's
different.
very similar in Australia.
Yeah.
But Australia has a very big binge drinking culture as well. So, yeah.
Is that why you don't drink?
Yeah, my teenage years were spent doing a lot of that. So, yeah, I got it out of my system early.
Good for you. Good for you. Have you guys ever considered making a Disentomb craft beer?
We have actually discussed that a few times. I don't know if we'll ever actually do that. There's a few venues in Australia that I think we could approach and sort of talk to about that. So
the Crowbar.
Yeah, Crowbar, exactly. So we'd like to, if there's an opportunity there, we'll definitely follow it.
If you did do that, what style beer would it be, and what would be its name?
Oh, that's a good one. I would probably say maybe an IPA. Call it Sloom Merc. I don't know. That just sounds like something Disentomb would have. Sloom Merc, but it doesn't sound very appetizing, does it? Like to when I drink
it doesn't. I would drink the Sloom.
It's only served in a bucket, maybe, or
a trough.
Cauldron. Yeah, a trough. Yeah, that sounds much more.
That's even better.
Yeah, cauldron. Yeah, a potion. Yeah, Sloom Merc. Get it now.
Get it in you.
Get it up, yeah.
Let's go back to your youth. You're growing up in your house. What music was playing? What would be the soundtrack to your youth?
To be honest, there was I have two older brothers. So from a young age, they're 5 and 8 years older than me. So from a young age, I was exposed to, they were going through the whole new metal phase in the late 90s, early 2000s. So much of my youth, when I was about 8, was listening to things like Marilyn Manson, Korn, and Slipknot, and then eventually System of a Down, which, like most people, kind of progresses into much more extreme genres. But that was kind of the soundtrack to my youth, which probably doesn't sound completely healthy, but and a lot of my parents listened to a lot of Jimmy Barnes, and that's like an Australian singer, and a lot of Australian country and that sort of thing, but I can't say that was too much of an influence on me. Yeah.
When did you pick up the mic? What was the reason? Why extreme vocals?
Yeah. I bought my oldest brother, Ryan, bought my first death metal album when I was 12, and it was Morbid Angel's Formula's Fatal to the Flesh, because I'd seen a music video for Rapture on TV late at night, and I thought, this is sick. And as soon as after I bought that CD, I just wanted to try and do vocals that sounded as, it just sounds bestial. It's just insane. So Jake, the guitarist of Disentomb, and we've been friends since we were 6 and 7. And he naturally started playing guitar when he was about 12. So I bought a bass, and I completely sucked at that.
But you were going to be there with him.
Yeah.
You weren't going to let him go off and join a band, and you weren't going to be there with him.
That's exactly right. I tried drums and completely sucked at that. If I wasn't good at bass, I probably wasn't going to be good at drums. So I just started making stupid noises with my mouth, and much to the disappointment of my parents, hearing me in the shower all the time, just sounding like a dying dog. I kind of got decent at that, and then Jake and I just sort of stuck together with that, and just been doing that since I was like 14, I think.
Were you a kid that used to sing? Was it something that you did? Can you carry a tune?
No, I certainly can't.
No?
No. I can only do gutturals. I wish, trust me, if I could sing, I probably wouldn't be in a death metal band.
How did your technique develop over the years?
It's really interesting. I started getting quite serious about it when Disentomb first formed when I was like 18, 19. And so I started focusing on just trying to get more guttural. And then it's just with increased amount of touring, especially since we dropped our album Misery in 2014, just being on the road a whole lot more, 4 or 5 months of the year, it gives you so much more opportunity to just try things out live and build up your stamina and your endurance. And I feel like over the years, even in the last year, I'm still trying out different techniques that are making my vocals more, I don't do highs, I only do lows, but even doing a variety of different sort of gutturals and gurgles and that sort of thing.
Which you and I will hear it and we'll appreciate that, we'll understand that, but to an outside person...
to an outside person, it sounds
just
like
screaming.
It sounds like static and white noise. So,
but it is true that the more that you tour, the more that you have time to play with it.
Yeah, definitely.
And you're warmed up and you're fresh and you're good.
Yep.
Versus when you go home and you rest a bit.
Yep.
And then you jump back into the jam room and it sucks again.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
I hate recording, but...
That was leading to that.
Yeah. I really...
Let's talk about being in the studio. What is that like? How do you feel? How do you track your vocals?
With the Decaying Light, we tracked it with a guy called Dan Field, and he's done a whole bunch of vocals for like bands in the past, like Amity Affliction and, all these sort of big sort of metalcore bands. And what we did was just did 2 tracks, vocal tracks each. But one thing I always find, I'm just super nervous before I go into the studio because... I just can't. I find it really difficult to capture what I do live actually in a studio. There's just certain ways you contort your body or your throat and that sort of thing that just you can't really recreate in the studio, especially with a mic that's set up on a stand. So that's always a bit nerve-wracking, but with the way we recorded for the Decaying Light, I think it's definitely captured the most out of any of our previous recordings.
What did you change that made it that way?
We just, honestly, we spent like 8 weekends over on vocals.
Good for you.
Yeah. So just going into the studio for 2 days and just trying different things.
And then resting for the week.
Resting for the week and then coming back. And
good for you.
Yeah. But I was recording 4 hours away from where I live, so it was just a lot of back and forth.
Got it, yeah.
Over 2 months.
I do have a secret for you. My guitarist is my producer.
Yep.
Vox&Hops alumni, Cryptopsy guitarist, Christian Donaldson. Whenever I track with him, I track with an SM7B in my hand.
Yep.
Have you ever tried that?
Yeah, I have done that actually.
That actually makes me feel much more comfortable, as if I'm on stage. You can contort, you can move the way you want.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter.
See, that's what made me feel really uncomfortable about this whole last recording process was I was used to holding it and handheld, but Dan was, pretty
adamant
on having it
fixed on a stand,
and so there was a lot of just leaning into the mic as much as possible. But I'm really happy with how it turned out, but it did feel strange, and there's always that nerves, when you hear death metal vocals without music behind it. Sounds ridiculous. Like
it is a bit nonsensical.
it just you listen to it and you think that's just rubbish. And then you put
Especially
the music.
because, it's the only thing you're analyzing, just that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So
It's like you and me watching our YouTube videos. We don't care what the bass is. We're listening to us.
Yeah.
But as hearing it alone is very hard, especially if you're in a studio context.
Yeah, definitely.
I like being in the studio, but I much rather the live experience.
100%.
You get much more of the vibe of the crowd.
Yep. I definitely feel that. And I always think Disentomb, the Decaying Light is, our best material yet, but I still think we're a live band. So to get the full Disentomb experience, I think you have to see us live. We have a pretty intense. We always aim to put on a pretty intense show for every show. So I think to get the full what we're about, you have to see it live.
Let's go into lyric writing. It's always very stressful for me. Filling Lord Worm's shoes.
Yeah.
Not only was he just an epic frontman and a precursor extreme vocalist, he also wrote some of the most interesting lyrics out there.
Yep.
How do you go about crafting lyrics, coming up with concepts, and then laying it down?
Well, I think I do things backwards compared to a lot of other vocalists. I'll always come up with the song title first.
Really?
Yeah. So I try and come up with a song title that, suits our themes, and the overall theme is sort of, we don't really go for gore or anything like that. There's a lot of sort of anti-theism elements to it, and throwing in a little bit of biblical mythology and just mixing stuff with our own sort of lore, coming up with our own sort of characters and monsters and that sort of thing. It sounds really geeky, but I'll come up with
death metal is geeky.
Yeah, that's exactly.
As much as everyone pretends it isn't, we are all geeks at heart.
Super geeky. So I'll come up with a song title and then sort of envision, what that's going to be about, and then sort of build a story around it or build some sort of concepts around that and go from there. So that's the main way I go about it. The overall themes for the Decaying Light, our latest album, is, there's a lot of stuff with, I guess if you look into it deep enough, or in the state that the lyrics were written in, there's a lot of, mental illness references in there, and, sort of those things that I think all of us in the band have sort of encountered and battled. And you can definitely tell the album was written over a 5-year span, and there was a lot of, we went through a lot of struggles, each of us personally, and I think the album overall captures that. And especially the lyrics and the styles. There's a lot of geeky mythology stuff in there as well, but underneath I think
substance.
There's definitely, we always want to write brutal death metal with emotions, so we try and make sure that's matched with the lyrics. There's that sort of dismal feeling of despair.
How hard is it waiting 5 years in between releases?
It was... we were tormented by it because there wasn't any reason for us to take that long, other than the fact that we dropped Misery in 2014.
And then you toured it.
And we toured, for 5 years. We were doing tours in support of that album, which, sounds insane. But we would be away for 4 or 5 months of the year while still holding down careers. And... when we got back from the 6 or 7 months we were back at home, we didn't really have time to be doing stuff with the band. So the album was essentially written in 2016, but we just held on to it and made a few changes here and there. But we finally...
Even vocally?
Yeah, even vocally.
Wow.
Yep. We a lot of things were completed, but we just didn't have time and didn't really just put it together.
It's hard. It always happens to me when I have a tour coming. I just want to be at home. Like the 2 weeks before I leave on the tour, I don't want to see anyone. I want to see my family.
That's exactly right.
Be there with my parents, be there with my kids, be there with my wife, spend some time. Go on the tour. Let's say it's a 5-week tour, so that's 7 weeks right there. And then come home, same thing. 2 weeks afterwards, I don't want to see anyone. I just want to be home. So that's like 9 weeks. That's... almost 4 months. Like
that's exactly right.
3.5 months just gone out of the year. So a lot of fans at home wonder why we're not just putting out music all the time.
Yeah, it was a bit frustrating for us when we had people saying, what's coming after Misery, for what seemed like, people were asking that for about 3 years. We just kept telling people to hold on.
We're working on it.
Yeah, we're working on it, but yeah, it was a frustrating situation for all of us that it took that long. We definitely will make sure that the break between album The Decaying Light and album 4, we've got half of that album already written now. So.
Good for you guys,
Yeah.
So that means, are you hypothetically going to sacrifice future tours to dedicate time to making it happen, or? The
Decaying Light, I feel like, is the first proper Disentomb album. I think we've really solidified our sound and what we're about. And I think now that we've figured out the formula of, what it takes to write a song that sounds like Disentomb, now we've figured that out, it's going to be a lot easier to write this next album. And we're just very conscious of, not letting time. I think we've learned a lot between albums in terms of how to get things done quicker. And having Adrian, our bassist, knowing he can record and as well as, mix, I think that's the way we're going to go. So if we can do...
Just track everything through him and just move forward. Yeah.
Do as much of it in-house. It should make it a pretty quick process.
It's always the best way. No one knows you guys as best as you guys.
That's exactly right,
But it's stressful for the guy that does it.
Yeah, it's stressful for Adrian.
Hats off to my guitarist.
Yeah.
To put up with all of our garbage.
Yeah, definitely. I can't imagine how frustrating it is. I'm just... I guess that's the penalty you pay for being super talented at production and recording.
It's like if you have a guy that's like an in-house videographer.
Yep. Your talent's going to be used.
on the shoestring budgets that death metal bands have.
Yeah.
We're going to utilize you to the full of your extent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about you. You mentioned you had a day job, death metal vocalist.
Yep.
At night, during the day, what happens?
I'm a group editor for 5 different newspapers across my state. So I work mainly from home. Which
works out well for the touring.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah.
But I oversee a team of journalists across 5 communities.
Wow.
And we put out non-daily newspapers. So some of the newspapers put out 2 papers a week or 1 weekly paper. And I moved to that job in January because it just allowed a little bit more flexibility with touring. Before then, I was a daily newspaper editor.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I moved up sort of through the ranks from a journalist when I first started in 2012. And yeah, so it's a bit of it definitely feels like living 2 different lives because, in my job, you'll deal with politicians, you'll deal with, very respectable people in the community, and then you'll sort of go on tour and not shower for a few days and,
hang out with people who are, death metal people tend to be a little bit of the outcasts of society.
Yeah, but...
a little bit more strange. It is a bit more tattoos.
Yeah, definitely. But, I feel pretty comfortable with the death metal crowd, that's for sure. So.
I was going to say, which one do you feel more at ease with?
I feel much more at ease wearing a Brodequin shirt, talking to a 35-year-old dude with a mortician tattoo than I do dealing with a politician in a suit.
At least you know what you're going to get.
That's exactly right. They're not going to lie to my face. So, that's a good start.
What would be the dream tour for Disentomb, if you have not already done it?
I think the dream tour, in terms of, I guess, bucket list bands, we've pretty much ticked off all the bands we've wanted to play with. But I think the dream tour for us would be something along the lines of Cannibal Corpse, just because they're the masters and, you can't get bigger than Cannibal Corpse in terms of true death metal. And then probably Dying Fetus, Morbid Angel, 1999 tour lineup. And I would probably say Disgorge from California. They're my favorite band of all time. So.
Really?
Yeah.
My boys.
Yeah.
Shout out to all of those guys. I love them.
Man.
Yes.
Yeah,
Ricky.
Yep. They're
the riff wizard.
Oh, dude,
Soria right now on bass.
Yeah.
And my lover boy, big teddy bear Angel.
Oh, yes. Angel.
Yes.
Yeah, he's
Uncle.
a beautiful man. But yeah, dude, Disgorge is. There wouldn't be any Disentomb without Disgorge. That's
really that's amazing. That's good to hear.
Disentomb is a Disgorge song from their demo, actually. So
well, there you go. There. Yeah.
So now we've got to write a song called Disgorge and full circle.
The next one.
Yeah.
If you could travel back in time and be on any tour again, what tour would that be?
I forget when it was in the 90s. It might have been 96 when Domination dropped, but Morbid Angel supported Pantera.
Really?
Yeah, because I remember you know, when you would download sort of things from LimeWire back in the day, and
Yes.
you download like 40-second clips.
Yes.
There's one of Phil Anselmo doing guest vocals for Morbid Angel through, I think it's a song off Blessed. The one that starts with dun 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 dun. But yeah, either way, that tour, because just seeing Phil Anselmo do guest vocals for Morbid Angel is
Fucking right, dude. Yeah.
yeah. So, you know, being on that tour would be pretty sick, and especially with Pantera, I imagine the crowds would be wicked. You know.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
Who do you think is the most extreme, best vocalist out there nowadays?
I would say the best, most extreme vocalist is the dude who has been the best, most extreme vocalist since the early 90s, which is Matty Way, from, you know, former Disgorged vocalist, sang on Cranial Impalement and Sheila Gutted, those albums, and now sings in, obviously, Abominable Putridity. And, you know, he's been on a few other projects, Liturgy and Cinerary. So, you know, that guy just can't be topped. I think his
the Toilet Bowl.
Those, man, we were listening to Cranial Impalement the other day, that album as a band, and it's just insane to think that came out in the early 90s or mid-90s.
You have to imagine like where his inspirations came from.
Well, yeah, I had a chance to meet Matty, and I asked him that, you know, and he said at the time, a lot of people, you know, I get it too from, you know, doing sort of ultra guttural vocals. You get people who come to shows who maybe so used to listening to bands like Cannibal Corpse, where, you know, there's a lot of enunciation with all the syllables. You know, people will say, "Oh, I like Disentomb, I like everything about it," but the vocals are a bit, you know,
I don't understand them.
Yeah, I don't understand them.
It's funny because I can tell that you probably write very good lyrics.
Thank you.
Being an editor for newspapers,
well,
I'm sure
at least the grammar and the punctuation is good. It might be like
good.
Shit content though. But so I asked Matty that, and he said he got the exact same thing, which I found like a really interesting perspective when he first came out in the mid-90s doing these. Just no one had done vocals like that before. Just sounded absolutely disgusting and inhuman, and it was really interesting just hearing from him that, you know, people were saying that stuff back then. And I can imagine for sure people, you know, early 90s hearing a dude that sounds like a drain pipe.
Yes it's pretty
going
it's pretty
from obscure.
Barnes era, Vial era,
But yeah, my two main vocalists,
the Bleeding era, sorry.
Yep, that's right. Just
when he just like really started just saying every word.
Yep. So yeah, my two main vocal inspirations are both former Disgorge vocalists, AJ Magana and Matty Way. So I think those guys have, you know, perfected it.
And then when you go through like on a live set, you think about the words, but you don't say them. No,
there is enunciation. Like there's certain vocal lines that I'll do where it'll
like
just
catchy ones, or
yeah. There's definitely ones where, you know, there's syllables and I am sort of roaring the exact lyrics, and there's a lot of times where I'm doing that. And especially in the newer stuff where we've really thought out the vocal patterns in the song composition. But especially with our older stuff, there's a lot of ones where, you know, there'll be an entire sentence, but there's no way in hell you're ever going to understand what I'm saying. Like you might tell a syllable halfway through the sentence, the octave might drop a little bit and just go,
oh, there's a different word.
Yeah, and you know that's the sign of a new sentence starting. So it is absolute. Like I understand.
So you just focus on the tone on stage.
Yep.
Your primary focus is the tone.
Yep.
Nailing that tone.
Yeah, and obviously trying to hit the syllables when they do. But there are a lot of times where, you know, everything just sort of blends into the one thing, and the emphasis really is on tone. Yeah.
Okay. So it's a work.
Yeah, it's a workout, that's for sure. Being on stage,
it's interesting. I love it. Yeah. Being in the world, I when I joined Cryptopsy, I really wanted to be brutal.
Yeah.
So I started more in that vein of just trying to scream as low as I can.
Yeah.
And now I'm trying to transition into a more enunciated syllable cut up, breaking down the words, more of a bark.
Yeah, definitely.
It's interesting to go to the both. Is there ever a moment that you wanted to move more? Is that's Disentomb and you want to stay to that, mixing the voices? I
think there'll always be a mix of just ultra guttural, you know, just completely understandable. But there's going to be times where, you know,
For like hooky parts, you're writing like a great line and you want the crowd to shout it with you.
Yeah, there's definitely hooks, and there was a bit of emphasis on the new album on making sure there is sort of vocal parts where, you know, it's going to be a lot more enunciated than a lot of other bits, you know, a bit where I guess when we're putting it together and it leads into, you know, a
the
slam or a
something.
sloom or whatever, we'll sort of want an emphasis
something you
on
can put on the back
line.
of a shirt.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah. Something you can. That's what
I mean. Yeah.
When we write songs now, I'll just say, you know, all right, this next bit's got to go on the back of a shirt. So
let's make sure they know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Jordan, I love it. Thank you so much. Come and having a beer with me at Le Saint-Bock Brasserie Artisanale.
Fantastic
really
beer.
Cheers.
Fantastic chat. Cheers.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Thank you so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. Jordan's such an extreme vocalist. I went to the show afterwards, and I was just blown away by this guy's performance. Just so brutal. One of the most extreme vocal performances I have ever witnessed. Huge shout-out to Jordan. Huge shout-out to Disentomb. You guys should all check out the Decaying Light, the new Disentomb record. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's going to be on a bunch of year-end lists, I'm sure. As always, the best way to support the Vox and Hops podcast is to go to the Vox and Hops Big Cartel page. Up there right now, we have the Vox and Hops cuff knit beanie that you can get. It's starting to get cold up here in Canada. We already got slammed with a bunch of snow, and the Vox and Hops cuff knit beanie is going to keep your noggin nice and warm. We also have the Vox and Hops 9-ounce branded glassware, the exact style of glass that I like to use when I'm drinking craft beer. I got these all right now. Get yours today through the link in the description. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope you have a great week. And remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox and Hops heads.